we have to have a voice, and we don't have a voice. We have to create a voice. We have to organize around having a voice for our interests. We have to represent our interests. We operate in a very highly regulated industry, but we're educated, or you're educators, but you are operating in a very regulated industry, like you're a nuclear plant. I mean, there are rules and rules and rules and rules. And the beautiful thing about independently operated charter schools is that you're independent. And the negative thing about being an independent charter school is that you're independent. And so we have to have a voice. And this is just in your best interest, in my view. According to the Alliance, 55% of all charter schools are actually independently operated. That means that you are actually the majority of charter schools in this nation. But if you, give a round of hand for that. But if you talk to the average person who knows nothing about charter schools, they're going to talk about for-profit industries engaged in it. That's not the majority industry. Matter of fact, according to the Alliance, 28% of charter schools are actually run by nonprofit management organizations. Only 16% of charter schools in this nation are actually run by for-profit entities. So how is it that the average person would assume that for-profit charter schools are the status quo in this industry? That's because all of these other charter schools do not have a voice. It's not up to other people to speak for us. You know, it's up to us to speak for ourselves, and we have to do, well, we don't have to do it. We're going to talk about that today. And with that being said, we're going to bring Mr. Merrill back up here to give us our instruction. We're going to do a traditional New England town hall, and we have one thing on the agenda. Back then they would call it a warrant, but we're not going to call it that today.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Yeah, so you have a voice. The question is, what are you going to say? So the town hall directions, since I have stuff I want to read, I'm going to sit down and read. The idea is to have a real town hall. It's to caucus in 5 separate groups to figure out what it is you agree on. Now, there are, in this wonderful program, for your consideration, the resolution, I wonder if it's worth reading aloud the whereas. Whereas our schools embrace our diverse communities, which include immigrants, people of color, children with disabilities, the homeless, English language learners, people of all faiths, and LGBTQ community. Whereas we inspire to be great community schools of choice for the families we serve. Whereas we are united behind the original chartering principles, including the requirement that every state have at least one independent entity that is empowered to authorize, evaluate, and either renew or close a school. Now, that's a significant point. Joe, in the earlier session, made that point, and that the chartering license, the authority cannot be restricted to the district. There has to be some competition, some counterbalance, which wasn't in the original law in Minnesota, as Ember said. And whereas the idea of charter schooling has become too narrowly defined, charter advocacy has become overly divisive, and many in the charter arena seem to be losing sight of a fundamental truth. Public schools, including charter schools, are a public trust. My own sense, and I've been following this story since 1988 in that original meeting, is that the term charter school has become so watered down, it has to be virtually meaningless. You say charter school, it's like saying restaurant. You have no idea what kind of food. Restaurant, oh, there must be food there. A charter school, you don't know, you have to go take a look. And I think it's important to figure out ways for this group of independent charter schools, which apparently are the majority, I did not know that, to have a strong voice so that their distinct qualities become the way the public understands charter schools. Because, as I say, right now I think the movement itself is at risk if the term itself becomes meaningless. So, and then the resolution, be it therefore resolved. Now, what we'd like in this town meeting is for the groups to caucus by region and to argue among yourselves to figure out, and you'll have, I think, about 15 or 20 minutes, all states west of the Mississippi, except for Minnesota, let's see, well, you can see where you're going. Central over there. Steve, you want to, the west is going over here, the northeast to the back of the room, Atlantic. This is the resolution that we are going to argue about, perhaps change, but ultimately vote on. Be it therefore resolved, the students, their families, the educators, and indeed the entire country need a national, independent, democratically organized charter advocacy group grounded in sound, child-centered educational practices to advocate for independently managed, community-oriented, financially transparent public charter schools with site-based decision-making. You heard me earlier say when we're child-centered, that means schools would look at each kid and do not say, how smart are you, but say, how are you smart? That's what the best of you do anyway. So that is the resolution that will be, you will be called to vote upon. So you'll caucus in your areas. In your regional caucus, please select 3 or more spokespersons who can take turns stepping up to the microphone to voice your opinion on the assumptions and the resolution. The spokespersons must be from schools. That's in boldface in my notes here, so please make note of that. There'll also be time for others to give opinions. Now, we didn't have a Q&A in the last session because I asked too many questions, and I apologize for that. But this will be a chance for you all to speak out. We have a fair amount of flexibility. But we want to hear from educators because this will be an educator-led movement. After you've selected spokespersons, the next thing is break into groups by state to discuss the resolution for a few more minutes, and then select the person who will deliver the vote for the great state of Minnesota, or the great state of Tennessee, the great state of New York. And we'll do a roll call. It'll be kind of fun. And you'll be given state signs that you can raise at appropriate moments. Are there questions about those directions? The vote is by state. The caucus is by region. Yes, the caucus is by region, but ultimately the vote is by state. So in your caucus, you select spokespersons. They must be from schools. And if there are no questions, then yes. Will there be, let me ask Steve. Steve, if people want to wish to propose amending the resolution, what's the process there?
Well, we don't have a process, but we should entertain amendments as long as we have time, and if they're germane to the. We tried to. There were so many things we could conceivably vote on here, and we tried to come up. But if there's playing with the language or whatever, I think we should entertain it.
You know, I think like a town meeting, if there is consensus that something has been left out, then we can argue that through and perhaps take a vote on it. We'll have time. And this is a democratic process, so clearly the will of the majority will rule. Questions on where you're supposed to go? Questions on which region you're from? Yeah.
Will New York City then join with New York State?
Yeah.
New York State is in the Northeast. New York City is New York City. No, New York City gets one vote.
New York State gets one vote?
Well, there's so many.
So New York.
Next year's California.
So New York gets one vote, or New York City?
New York State has a vote.
And New York City has a vote?
New York City has a vote, and New York State has a vote.
Whoa, okay, I can see we got. Then Northern California gets a vote, and Southern California gets a vote. We got, Hey, it's going to be messy. It's guaranteed to be messy. Yes.
So if there's a question about a term, for example, site-based decision,
Yes.
is there a definition of what that means?
The question was, is there a definition, for example, of site-based decision-making? Steve?
Yes, it's something that we've been asked many times. How do we determine what an independent charter school is? And our definition is, do you make your decisions? Do you hire your teachers? Do you select your curriculum? The site is the charter school. If someone else is making those decisions for you, then you do not enjoy site-making decision.
As a reporter, I sometimes would ask school principals how much of the budget they controlled. And very often it was almost minimal dollars. They did not have site-based decision-making because they couldn't decide to spend money on this or on that. So, but I think that is clear. Other questions on? Okay, then Westerners, head this way. Northeast, head this way. New York City, over that exit sign. But don't go through the exit. The Atlantic states are in the back, and the central states are over here. West is right over there.
There is part of the manifesto is about, the alignment of compassionate and teaching staff, and there's been a lot of talk about teacher empowerment being an important part of what independent charter schools stand for.
What are they advocating for? What does a charter
Well, I think they are
advocacy group?
advocating for the needs of independent charter schools as opposed to the National Alliance, which work for CMOs and the, corporate model of charter schools to speak up for this kind of reform. I feel like our voices do get subsumed by that. Like everyone thinks charter schools are like, KIPP and those big companies, right? We're like the local brewery, right?
Yeah.
And instead of the course, right? And we need our own group to speak for what our needs are because they're not the same. And I think we represent something that's has much more ability to collaborate with district schools and are more grounded in what's best for kids
And it's local.
and
We're
what's
local.
best for kids in your location,
Right.
your specific,
Right.
unique situation.
So
But then
would be
how-
I guess my question is, what would be the harm in having this organization? Why not?
Well, because it potentially splits the charter school in a way. All these parts of national.
But aren't we already?
Yeah.
Doesn't that already exist?
Right, and maybe, yeah.
I would think
I
that
can
split.
speak to this from personal experience. I run a state support group and advocacy group out of California, and I participate in the National Alliance's State Leaders Council and their other activities and interact with them frequently. But I often feel like the black sheep at the garden party.
And then I think the organization needs to figure out democratically the different things that we want to do. Because what I think is missing, and Steve mentioned this, are some of the core values. Are we advocating for equity? Are we, some of those things? So what I would do is maybe take out a couple of the words. I might just put a period at the end of, we're advocating for independently managed, community-oriented schools, period. And then work on the rest of it, because I think there's so much more. Like, I would like to put in the whereas considerations about all the populations later on. But, for today, in our 15 minutes, if we all agree that we need an organization to advocate, let's do that. And then we're going to have to hammer out all the different pieces of that.
Or they talked about amending, right? So the last question on the table before we broke into caucus was, do we feel strongly about amending the resolution? And it sounded like we did.
Go back to your question, though. Do we feel strongly that we think having an organization that comes
Because back then we made a conscious decision among 100 of us to pursue quality over quantity. And you know what? In the past dozen years or so, independent mom and pops have been absolutely steamrolled in this movement in Rhode Island by big box, by mayorals, by out-of-state groups. And you know what? As far as divisive, yes, I am divisive. You know what? We have to stand up for ourselves. What Norwood said about you're either at the table or on the table, is pivotal. And we can wordsmith this all day. I love your words. You know what? At the end of the day, we need voice, we need an organization, we need to step up, and this is the moment to do it. So you can wordsmith and you can parse and you can insert commas all day long. At the end of the day, it's not going to bring power to our schools and our group, and that's what we need. So you know what? As far as I'm concerned, hearing none opposed, I support this resolution wholeheartedly and in its original form. Absolutely, 100%.
So I don't think the opposition was whether we should have an advocacy group. I think it's what do we stand for and why do we.
We all know what we stand for, and we're all great people, and we all love to have input, and we desire that. Yeah, rah rah. Guess what? Let's move on. Let's not let this.
Well, not the only voice, so.
Let's not let this moment.
What other folks think? Have you heard?
I would say, like, I hear that and that need to, like, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. But I think being part of the table doesn't mean that we are creating division when we're there. I think the messaging for so long has been pitting one against the other. That wherever we can kind of tuck it in this broader message of that's important, more inclusive of, like, pushing public education. Or linking it back to it, I think that's important.
I agree, but I don't think we made it divisive.
Correct.
Like that's
You're
the
right.
that's the part that I hear what you're saying, and I also believe like you can't get very far with divisiveness. But I just know what we've been through in Pennsylvania in our charter renewal, and it was hell, and it set us back. And I feel like we didn't make that divisive. And part of me believes extending the olive branch, but they're not interested in accepting it where I am.
And the other point, I don't want to be divisive, but I do think that there's a division that's real that we have to recognize. You have now districts that are being almost taken over by CMOs. We don't put that issue out there as part of the purpose for our existence, then I think we are at risk of that just continuing to be the case. And so now you're looking at districts where you've got maybe 5 or 10% of schools that might be independent, and then 90 to 95% are CMOs. And if we don't call that
That's
out,
what this whole resolution is about.
But the reality is that if we don't put that out there, I believe that's not part of the statement. And I don't mean in a divisive way, but if we don't shed light on that, then I think that we're really allowing the country to sort of miss the overarching message, which is independent charter schools need to be here, and they need to be a viable option for our children. And so if you have one-size-fits-all districts because one CMO is taking over all the public schools, there is not a whole lot of, the odds are against us for sustainability.
If what you're doing is then everything is coming from above, and you're still being handled a prepackaged curriculum, which is the problem in any kind of school where you have a prepackaged curriculum, then what good is that, right? I mean, I just wouldn't work in those kinds of schools, but.
There was a fascinating report. I can't remember who did it anymore about innovations in charters and about how as the schools start to expand or whatever, that because they're getting renewed based on their test scores, the programs become much more based on that and less on the arts focus they had or whatever the innovation was that created the school in the first place.
Was your school ever a member of the whatever charter school association?
On and off, we've been a member of the charter school organization, which has gone through a bunch of different iterations. There was one, and then there were two, and now there's one again.
You never get to use these.
You gotta stick together. Atlanta gotta stick together, man.
Thank you.
Folks, may I ask you to come back?
How long has the association existed?
We started 2 years ago.
Folks, may I ask you to come back, reconvene? I ask you to come back. It's time for democracy in action. Is everyone sitting by state? Now, okay, now let's all come to order, please. Let's all come to order. We could have it be like a school. Hey, that works. Okay, so now we would get reports from each caucus, not each state, each caucus reporting, and this is a time to make suggestions, to tell us what was good, what is bad. Someone said, is there a way to propose changes in a whereas? Yes. This is the time for that conversation. And it may be messy, I don't know. With a lot of educators, you may want to change some commas. But let's start with a report from the Atlantic Caucus. Is that the sum of your report?
Microphones are up here.
Microphones are here. Would someone from Atlantic come up to the, yes, right up here, there's a mic. Are you from representing the Atlantic?
Hello.
And then would someone from the New York City caucus come to this other microphone? You'll be next. Yes.
I'm from North Carolina. My name is Shane Klein. We are generally supportive of the resolution. We had 2 suggestions. In the second whereas clause, we like the idea of adding the word students and families we serve, being great community schools of choice for students and families we serve. And we also thought that an additional whereas clause, and whereas we support empowering educators, we just didn't see the words educators very much in the text that it's written.
So in your suggestion is immigrants,
In
people
the second whereas clause,
Yeah.
we aspire to be great community schools of choice for the students and families we serve.
for the students and families we serve.
Yes, and then
Okay. Oh, wait.
after that,
Well, let me,
oh, sorry.
can I ask for, not a roll call vote, but a show of hands. If you find this acceptable, put your hand up, please. And if you do not, if you want to say, think that's a bad idea, okay, it is approved. Your second?
Our second was to add in between the second and third whereas clauses, an additional clause.
Say, before we add it, would you read what you?
Sure. And whereas we support empowering educators.
And whereas we support empowering educators. This means the empowerment of educators. Is that correct?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be fine as well.
Could we make so that it doesn't become like the Second Amendment?
Yep.
The empowerment of
It will
educators.
anyway, but
Is there discussion of that? Yes, sir. Yes, come on up and tell us about that before we call for a vote on this one. This is the great state of Minnesota, for those of you.
Whoa. So I think great minds think alike. We had, and whereas we support empowering educators in the classroom and encourage collaborative site-based decision-making.
Well, the site-based decision-making is here, is there.
It is.
Why in the classroom? I mean, that seems restrictive. And Colorado agrees with me.
Okay.
The mean state of Colorado disagrees with the nice,
We
with
wanted
Minnesota
to make sure we
nice.
included classroom in addition to, so that we look to the original intent that teachers had that empowerment in their classrooms.
Discussion of this? Yes. Yes, please go to the mic.
I'm from Pennsylvania. It will be great when it starts being equitable in education. So I don't know if this is quite in order, but in our group there was some division, a feeling
Wait a minute,
like
so you're not responding to this?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Feeling like editing the whereas statements is difficult because it feels like it imperfectly characterizes our basis of unity. So one thought within our group, it wasn't a majority position, we didn't vote, but was that we adopt the manifesto as a more complete representation of our basis of unity, and then move on to the resolved clause, rather than editing all the whereases to more perfectly represent what we're unified around.
The adoption of the manifesto has been, I guess, take it that as a proposal or a motion, in which case I reckon it needs a second. There's a second, and there's a third, all right, that's enough. Steve, may I call for adoption of that? She's proposing that this group adopt the manifesto and then move to general discussion of the resolution. And I suspect then is to call for action steps. Yeah, so if the roll call for a motion has to be by state. So I need to know, can I have a way of calling the roll of the states? So the motion is to adopt the manifesto, which is longer. No, the motion is to adopt it. So this is an up or down vote. So Arizona, the motion is to adopt the manifesto as written, and then to move forward to the resolution, and to not quibble not argue about the language of the whereases. How does Arizona vote? Arizona votes yes. You're going to keep the score here? And I need another state. Yes, it's the entire back page, yes. The manifesto. The manifesto, which I assume you've all read. How does the great state of California vote? Where is California? And how did California votes? Yes. Okay, that's next state, please. And Colorado. Colorado votes yes. You don't need to do that. Just give me the states. Connecticut, how does the great state of Connecticut vote? Connecticut votes yes. Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. votes yes. Florida, how does Florida vote? Is it yes? Georgia. Georgia votes yes. Illinois. Where is Illinois? Did they sneak out for coffee? You voting yes. You can do it dramatically if you like. The great state of Maine. The great state of Maine, that's Fiddlehead Charter School and others, yes. The vote yes. Okay, the great state, my home state, or where I live now, sort of. Massachusetts. Massachusetts, I vote yes. No, I don't know. Massachusetts is not here. Massachusetts abstains. All right, so we're about, how did Minnesota Nice vote? They vote yes, nicely. New Jersey? New Jersey votes yes. We may be over the New York State. How does New York State vote? Where is New York? Oh, there, okay, New York State, New York City are voting.
We caucus separately, by the way.
Okay.
New York City votes yes.
Votes yes. Okay. Moving on. North Carolina votes yes. Ohio. Yes. Ohio votes yes. Pennsylvania votes yes. Rhode Island. Rhode Island votes yes. I'd like someone to stand up and say, the great state of Rhode Island votes, just once. And we'll get to, there we, you have made my jet lag body so happy that, and Texas? Utah. There we This is going to catch on. And Washington, the great state, Washington State. They ran off with Massachusetts. People are talking that Wyoming. Wyoming. So it's something strange going on with a 3. Are we done? We have enough votes to carry. The motion passes. This group has adopted the manifesto. We want to hear from the caucuses, and then we will, at some point, proceed to vote on this resolution, and then I hope perhaps suggest some action plans to make this a reality. We want to walk away from this weekend not just feeling good, but with some things that we're going to do to figure out ways independent charter schools can work together to be stronger, to share weaknesses, so that to share mistakes they made, all such a possibilities. So let's hear from the caucus from New York State.
New York City.
New York City.
Yeah, so New York City, regarding the motion in chief, the be it therefore resolved, we had a proposal, and we think it makes even more sense now that we've amended the whereas clauses to include the adoption wholesale of the manifesto, which makes a lot of sense. Those are our core values right there. It's all about our approach to what the organization is. For that reason, let's tighten up the motion in chief. This is what New York City thinks. To read as follows. The students, their families, the educators, and indeed the entire country need a national, independent, democratically organized group, to advocate for independently managed, community-oriented public charter schools.
Wait a sec, need a national?
So we need a national, independent, democratically organized group to advocate for independently managed, community-oriented public charter schools. We would take out the financially transparent site-based decision-making, not because it's not a good thing, but it's already reflected in the whereas clause. It makes for a stronger statement, and it also lets organizations or folks around the country know right away what the organization is about generally. If you're looking for something like the coalition, you're going to identify it more clearly that way.
There is nothing in the whereases that calls for financial transparency.
It's in the manifesto.
It's in the manifesto.
It's one of our core values.
Okay, so you would shorten this resolution.
Shorten it to get folks' attention, and then you're referring them to the whereas they should read the manifesto. They'll find out what we're all about.
The students, their families, the educators, and Well,
okay, so it's the students, their families, the educators, and indeed the
need a national. Where's the first change? Need a democratically organized. So group goes in right there after. Right, group. So put democratically organized group. Take this. All right.
Let me go on to
group.
Advocate for.
Democratically. Okay.
And then Rebecca, it's to advocate for from there, right?
To advocate. Okay, for.
Do you have it written down?
Take that out. Okay, to take out the grounded in. Okay, where are we doing? Okay.
John?
When my kids were in school in Washington, D.C., they attended a dual language public school. And we had meetings like this all the time, except they were in 2 languages. So they went on for a long time. Well, let's get this up. to advocate for. Yeah. Democratically organized. You can take out all the hyphens. Yeah. All hyphens or no hyphens. So this then is the resolution that you will eventually vote on. We're not going to vote on right now because we're hearing from different groups. But I need the sense of the group. Is this proposed change to this editing of the resolution? Okay, representing Minnesota, you're going to be nice?
So my recollection is that John Merrow was the first national journalist on PBS who pointed out that there was an independent charter in Arizona that was financially not transparent and was very corrupt. And there have been examples of independently managed, community-based, not financially transparent public charter schools. Therefore, I think that I understand it's in the manifesto. The problem is that when journalists are going to report on this, they are not going to quote the entire manifesto. They're going to quote about 4 or 5 lines. Therefore, I think the term financially transparent is not just important, it's critical. If you want to rewrite the rest of it, that's fine, but I think we need to say explicitly in the resolution, financially transparent.
As a journalist, I can testify to our short attention span. What was it you were saying? I think Joe makes a very good point that if that really matters, I think it probably is a good idea. I would suggest it's not my meeting. I'm just here, but my experience is that a lot of people will read this, and they may go into this. Community-oriented, comma, after oriented. All right, put it there. Financially transparent, comma, community-oriented public charter schools. And then, yeah, Joe, you did that very nicely. You did that very nicely. But now you're speaking for?
I have a comment on the process.
Okay.
Okay, so may I suggest that instead of editing with every suggestion, we at least perhaps create another copy so that this feels very jagged that we're removing words while we haven't yet voted on, agreed upon this new copy.
I would, the original one remains here. No, it doesn't. I'm sorry. They're all, his point is. Yeah.
That's the original.
Okay, there's the original, and this is the work in progress. Okay, so we'll have
That's
that
good.
for, are there reports from, okay, we've heard from New York. Can we hear? Okay, so we're all set on that. Can we hear from the West? No, this is.
New York State has not been represented
Okay.
yet. I spoke on behalf of New York City because we caucus separately.
Okay, then New York State would you report if you have something to add to the conversation?
No, New York State votes with the Northeast. New York State was supposed to.
Oh, I see. So then we are going to hear from the Northeast.
Right.
All right. And here is the Northeast.
Yes, I think we wanted to add, if you look at the revised,
stay on the mic,
if you
please.
look at the revised resolution, I guess the way it's changed around, that are fairly, at the end, after schools, that are fairly and equitably funded. We haven't talked about that, but I think that's a big issue. No, it's be it resolved. We're not, it's,
advocate.
You want to get it in there that we want to make sure that we're fairly and equitably funded. There is nothing in the manifesto, there is nothing in the whereas clause, and there is nothing anywhere else. And I think that's an issue that we need to address up front. That is one of the most important things for our school. Well, you're describing the type of schools that you wanted, independently managed.
This is what the group is going to advocate for.
Financially transparent, community-oriented charter schools, all right?
No, to advocate for. This says this group will advocate for the following things. Independently managed, that will advocate for independently managed. It will advocate for financially transparent. It will advocate for community-oriented. It will, schools that are fairly and equitably funded.
All right, so then you could say that should be fairly and equitably funded.
Yes.
Could I make
so
a
take
comment?
out that should be fairly and equitably funded.
Yeah. No.
Could I make a comment on this? John, just one comment to
Yes,
this?
of course.
I thought that the purpose of this was that we wanted to talk about that we needed to be able to organize together. There are 1,000,001 things we can organize on. I think I agree with just about everybody here with having equitable funding, being financially transparent. But I think that if everybody is to put different things in this statement, we could be here all day and be caught up in never getting it. I'd like to leave here today knowing that we agree we need to work together as a coalition and that we're going to hammer out all these different important pieces as we come together. And all these things need to be addressed and talked about. So for me, I like the simple, and then I think we need to get to the meat. The manifesto has a lot of it, but I also agree it needs to be in other places. If we're worried about the press, then I think we should have a statement for the press that says some of the things that are important to us are financial transparency, equitable funding, and these are things we're going to be looking at. So if that's the piece we're worried about, thanks.
Okay.
Well, listen, right now, it's not said anywhere. So
there's nothing in
if
the
you
manifesto.
We've already voted on the manifesto, all right? So we voted on the manifesto unless you want to reopen.
You adopted the manifesto.
Right, the manifesto doesn't include it. So we have to include it someplace else, or we have to go back and have a vote to reopen the manifesto, include fair and equitable funding.
What this organization that you are about to form, what do you want it as your public statement of what it represents? What do you want it to be advocating for? You've already said.
I'm going to make a motion that we reopen the manifesto to include the inclusion
under the equity.
Under
the first one is equity.
Under the equity provision, that we advocate that charter schools be fairly and equitably funded. Okay?
Is there a second on that motion? Okay. So what we're doing right now is we're going to strike that, or in public charter schools, period. Well, let's take that out for now.
We've already. I'm just going to make a comment, but we've already pretty much agreed upon that the press is narrowly centered and a small attention span.
Yes, I stand as living proof that. Yeah. Yeah, but so if you put in, the equity,
essential value.
Yeah, if you put in, all those in favor of adding the line about fair and equitable funding to the equity, the first part of the manifesto, would you please raise your hands if you're in favor of it? You're going to, and all those who are opposed.
To add it
it passes, the motion passes that you will work out the exact wording, but in the equity section of the manifesto, which is the first section, you will add the fair and equitable funding for the school.
As the person who suggested that we add that into the resolution, I withdraw that.
Okay. Okay. So we're here now. We've heard from the Northeast. We've heard from the West. No. Here's the West.
Yeehaw. I am the West. I'm representing the West. Here we are. Woo! Yeehaw! All right. So one of the things that we discussed, which I actually think might resolve some of the dialogue that I'm hearing now, is that we wanted to have in the statement something about the fact that we're referring to the manifesto. We had suggested before that we wanted it to say something about referring to the original chartering principles and having those listed somewhere, but as we've evolved, what I'm hearing is that, and we took the statement out around grounded and sound child-centered educational practices because every school is going to argue that they are, but now it feels we should put grounded in the manifesto or whatever the language is, so that we know that this resolution is speaking specifically about advocating for everything that we have just agreed is in the manifesto. So that way we don't have to keep saying add this little thing, add this little thing. We have all of our advocacy needs listed in the manifesto. We have the manifesto as that gathering place for those things listed in the resolution.
How would you suggest, thank you for that, how would you suggest
I
for
think
you to
you
amend
put that
the-
in the whereas clause, because the whereas is part of this. It's whereas. So you add something about the manifesto in the whereas clause?
I thought we got rid of the whereas clauses to utilize the manifesto.
Well, here's a proposal as articulated in our manifesto. As articulated in our manifesto.
Great.
That stands as an edit, and it's accepted. Thank you very much. I'd like to hear from, what do I want to hear from? I've heard from the West. I've heard from, I think we've heard from every region, and it's now time for a roll call, my favorite part. And I really want, it's a role model from Rhode Island about how you're supposed to vote. Got it? Oh, more from the West?
I just a photo opportunity for social media, or my social media person will kill me. So I'm going to pretend to be speaking right now. If you all could look at me and like nod.
Well, since you're from the West, perhaps you could sing "Happy Trails to You" until.
It's really embarrassing.
Again. All right. Oh, that was PR. That was a staged photo op, like Mike Pence at the football game. All right, we'll do a roll call. We're ready to, shall we do it alphabetically again, or would you like us to surprise you? You're voting I need a motion. Well, no, you don't need a motion. No, you're voting on this resolution. So, the new resolution. Could you put up the new resolution in the main board? Thank you very much. See, it's this one. Are the whereas still included? They're not. They're gone. Whereas the whereases are gone. So this is what you are voting on right now. Be it therefore resolved, the students, their families, the educators, and indeed the entire country need a national, independent, democratically organized group to advocate for independently managed, financially transparent, community-oriented public charter schools as articulated in our manifesto. That's what you're voting on. Let's do the roll call. It's time for the roll call. And apparently it's going to be alphabetical. May I hear from Arizona? Where is Arizona? Oh, would you please stand up and vote? says yes. The great state of Arizona says yes. We'll go to California. No. As aye. There we go. Colorado. Colorado says yes. Connecticut. Now, sir. The Nutmeg State. The Charter Oak State. The Constitution State. The Charter Oak State. The Nutmeg State. It's all those things, yes. Okay, Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. Georgia. Oh, come on. Come on, give me some love. Maybe Y-E-S? Illinois. By the way, there's a prize for the best vote. Where's Illinois? The great state of Illinois, who 3 out of the last 4 governors are now serving time. and Maine, with a governor who, Maine, the great state of Maine, known for its lobsters and its wacky governor, votes. Massachusetts, have you come back from your secret trysts? They have not. Minnesota, they're not demonstrative.
Great state of Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, and the very first charter school votes yes.
There we go. There we go. New Jersey. That's, yeah.
The great state of New York, the Empire State, and the city of New York, the 51st state. Vote yes.
And the capital of the world. North Carolina. The great state of North Carolina, where the football players of our great university never attend class, votes yes. Ooh. Ohio.
Oh, wait.
The Ohio. Pennsylvania. Little Rhodey was the real model for voting. They broke for lunch. Rhode Island votes yes. They gave me their proxy. They're bringing me a hamburger. Yeah. Texas. Utah. I just returned from East Africa and learned that the country that I've always pronounced Uganda is pronounced Uganda. And I wonder if that makes you Utah. Utah. The great state of Utah. Wyoming? Still not here. They ran off with Massachusetts. Okay. Yeah. And I think maybe congratulations, you guys have just made history. Give yourself a hand. Yeah. Here's what I suggest. Here's what I suggest, because now you enjoy lunch, and now the hard work begins. Now the hard work begins. You got to figure out how to move forward, how to get some attention, how to make yourself stronger, how to share the things that go wrong honestly, and so you can move on and others won't make those same mistakes, how to share the things that work. There's so much to do, and I, as a huge fan, now that I'm retired as a journalist, I can be a fan. As a huge fan of independent charter schools, I don't know that I can be of any help, but if I can, I'd be glad to. I'm going to turn this over to our leader.
Yeah, I want to thank, big round of applause for Mr. John Merrill. Buy his book out there. It's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Cheryl, I don't know if Cheryl's still here.